The morning of January 26, 2020, began like any other Sunday in Los Angeles. Traffic reports, coffee shops opening, youth basketball games scheduled across the city. Somewhere above Calabasas, a Sikorsky S-76 helicopter cut through thick fog, carrying 9 passengers, including Kobe Bryant and his 13-year-old daughter, Gianna. They were heading to the Mamba Sports Academy. It was routine, a short flight, something he had done many times before. At 9:45 a.m., the helicopter vanished from radar. Within minutes, emergency calls flooded in. Smoke was seen rising from a hillside. First responders navigated steep terrain and low visibility. Early reports were fragmented. A crash, multiple fatalities, identities unconfirmed. Then the unthinkable surfaced online. TMZ reported that Kobe Bryant had died in a helicopter accident. The news spread faster than official confirmation. Phones lit up, group chats exploded, fans refused to believe it. He had just been courtside the night before, congratulating LeBron James for surpassing him on the NBA scoring list. When the NBA confirmed the death, the atmosphere shifted instantly. Games that night felt secondary, almost inappropriate. Players were visibly shaken during warm-ups. Some teams allowed the 24-second shot clock to expire in tribute. Outside Staples Center, fans gathered in disbelief, laying down jerseys, candles, handwritten notes. The arena's digital screens glowed with a single message: Kobe. The shock was not just about an athlete, it was about presence. For 2 decades, Kobe had been a constant in basketball culture, in highlight reels, in championship parades, in debates about greatness. He was still visible, still active, still mentoring the next generation. There had been no slow farewell, no decline broadcast to prepare the world. One moment he was coaching his daughter's team, the next, silence. But before the championships, before the Mamba Mentality, before the numbers 8 and 24 became symbols, there was a teenager who skipped college and bet everything on the NBA. To understand why that hillside in Calabasas felt like a rupture in sports history, we have to rewind to the beginning, long before the sky fell. Long before the championships and championship parades, before Mamba became a philosophy, Kobe Bryant was just a child living thousands of miles away from Los Angeles. Born in Philadelphia in 1978 to former NBA player Joe "Jellybean" Bryant, Kobe spent much of his early childhood in Italy, where his father continued his professional basketball career. In small European gyms, he absorbed the game differently, watching international styles, studying footwork, understanding spacing. He learned Italian fluently. Basketball was not just sport, it was language, rhythm, structure. When the family returned to the United States, Kobe entered Lower Merion High School in Pennsylvania. That is where the myth began to form. Unlike most elite American prospects, he had no college highlight reel. He had something else: obsession. Teammates recall him practicing before school, after school, long after others had left the gym. By his senior year, he was one of the most talked about high school players in the country. Reporters packed small-town arenas to watch him. Scouts debated whether he was ready for the NBA straight out of high school, a rarity at the time. In 1996, at just 17 years old, Kobe Bryant declared for the NBA draft. It was a gamble. Skipping college meant skipping the traditional proving ground. On draft night, he was selected 13th overall by the Charlotte Hornets, then immediately traded to the Los Angeles Lakers. The decision would define his life. Moving across the country, stepping into a league dominated by grown men, and carrying expectations far beyond his age, Kobe embraced it without hesitation. He was the youngest player in NBA history at the time. Early games were uneven, air balls in playoff moments, rookie mistakes under bright lights. But even in failure, something stood out. He did not flinch. While others saw embarrassment, he saw data. The teenager who had once trained alone in European gyms now stood on an NBA court wearing purple and gold. He was not yet a champion, not yet a superstar, but he had already made the defining choice to skip safety, skip college, and chase greatness immediately. The Lakers' uniform fit, and the journey that followed would reshape an entire franchise. When Kobe Bryant arrived in Los Angeles, he entered a franchise already orbiting a giant, Shaquille O'Neal. The Lakers were powerful, marketable, and hungry for titles. Kobe, still a teenager, found himself sharing the court with one of the most dominant centers in NBA history. At first, he was the apprentice, explosive off the bench, fearless in late-game moments, occasionally reckless. But over time, the pairing of Shaq and Kobe evolved into one of the most formidable duos basketball had ever seen. Between 2000 and 2002, the Lakers won 3 consecutive NBA championships. Kobe was no longer just potential, he was a key engine. His footwork sharpened, his shot selection matured, his defensive intensity intensified. The airballs of his rookie playoff series became distant memory. He had studied the greats obsessively, especially Michael Jordan, absorbing their tendencies, replicating their mechanics. In championship games, he played with a composure that belied his age. The dynasty felt inevitable, but dominance came with friction. Tension between Shaq and Kobe grew publicly and privately. Different personalities, different approaches to preparation. Kobe's relentless discipline contrasted with Shaq's more relaxed style. By 2004, the partnership fractured. Shaq was traded to Miami. Many questioned whether Kobe could carry a team alone. Critics labeled him talented but difficult. The spotlight sharpened. Then came one of the most explosive individual performances in NBA history. On January 22, 2006, Kobe scored 81 points against the Toronto Raptors, the second highest single-game total ever recorded. It was not just scoring, it was eruption, fadeaways, three-pointers, drives through double teams. The Staples Center crowd oscillated between disbelief and awe. That night crystallized something larger than statistics. Kobe could dominate a game at will. The championships returned in 2009 and 2010. This time, the narrative shifted. No longer the sidekick, no longer the prodigy chasing validation. Kobe led the Lakers to back-to-back titles, earning Finals MVP honors. The 2010 victory against the Boston Celtics, the Lakers' historic rival, carried special weight. Game 7 was gritty, imperfect, physical. When the final buzzer sounded, Kobe stood atop the scorer's table, arms raised, eyes blazing with exhaustion and triumph. He had evolved from gifted teenager to franchise pillar, from apprentice to architect. The nickname Black Mamba began circulating, a symbol of calculated aggression and lethal focus. It wasn't marketing, it was identity. But championships were only part of the transformation. The next phase would not be defined by rings, but by philosophy, a mindset that extended far beyond basketball. By the late 2000s, Kobe Bryant was no longer chasing validation. He was chasing refinement. Championships had proven his dominance. Now he wanted something harder to measure, mastery. Teammates told stories of arriving at the practice facility before sunrise only to find Kobe already drenched in sweat. Coaches described him dissecting game film frame by frame, searching for microscopic advantages. The nickname Black Mamba became more than persona. It evolved into a code: relentless preparation, emotional control, obsession with incremental improvement. The 2008 Beijing Olympics marked a pivotal moment in that transformation. Representing Team USA alongside other NBA superstars, Kobe became the emotional anchor of the squad. In close games, he demanded defensive intensity. In the gold medal match against Spain, he delivered crucial plays that sealed victory. The world saw a version of Kobe that blended leadership with sacrifice. The Mamba mentality wasn't just about scoring, it was about responsibility. As the years advanced, injuries accumulated. A torn Achilles tendon in 2013 threatened to end his career abruptly. Instead of retreating quietly, Kobe limped to the free throw line to complete his shots before walking off the court. It became one of the defining images of resilience in modern sports. Pain acknowledged, but not permitted to interrupt duty. When retirement finally arrived in 2016, it came on his terms. In his final NBA game, he scored 60 points against the Utah Jazz, a farewell that felt scripted by Hollywood. After the buzzer, he stood at center court and delivered 2 words that encapsulated 2 decades of intensity: Mamba out. The arena roared, the era closed, yet he did not disappear. Instead, Kobe shifted arenas. In 2018, he won an Academy Award for the animated short film Dear Basketball, based on a poem he had written announcing his retirement. It was an unexpected pivot, athlete to storyteller, but consistent with his appetite for reinvention. He invested in business ventures, authored books, and perhaps most importantly, embraced fatherhood publicly. Images of Kobe coaching his daughter Gianna's basketball team became increasingly common. He sat courtside explaining spacing, footwork, angles, the same details he once studied obsessively. His voice softened in interviews when discussing his daughters. The competitor remained, but the focus expanded. The Mamba mentality was no longer confined to hardwood floors. It became a blueprint for discipline across fields: sports, business, creativity. Kobe had transitioned from star to mentor, from scorer to teacher, and it seemed the next chapter was just beginning. The morning air over Southern California looked ordinary from the ground, but above the hills it was unstable. Low clouds, shifting fog, visibility that could change in a minute. On January 26, 2020, a Sikorsky S-76 helicopter carried 9 people toward a youth basketball tournament at the Mamba Sports Academy in Thousand Oaks. Among them were Kobe Bryant and his 13-year-old daughter, Gianna. The destination wasn't an arena. It wasn't a red carpet event. It was a gym full of kids, parents, and coaches. That everyday purpose, so normal, so human, would later make the tragedy feel even harder to accept. At approximately 9:06 a.m., the helicopter departed the Orange County area and moved north toward Los Angeles. Air traffic control communications indicated weather-related limitations along the route. The aircraft waited in holding patterns, circling as it navigated pockets of fog and low cloud cover. Eventually, it proceeded under Special Visual Flight Rules clearance. In simple terms, the helicopter continued in conditions where the pilot had to rely heavily on visual reference, something fog is designed to steal. Radar and flight data later showed the aircraft climbing and descending as it moved through uneven visibility. Witnesses in the Calabasas area would later describe hearing the helicopter before seeing anything, an engine sound cutting through gray air. Some reported that it seemed to be flying low, emerging briefly from cloud before vanishing again. Moments later, at 9:45 a.m., contact was lost. Smoke was soon visible on a hillside. Calls flooded emergency dispatch lines. First responders were forced to navigate steep terrain and poor visibility. Within a short time, the truth was confirmed. There were no survivors. What followed was an information storm. Early reports were incomplete. Names circulated online before families were officially notified. Authorities urged the public to slow down, emphasizing the responsibility of confirming identities with dignity. But the world moved at internet speed. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department held briefings while the investigation began. Across social media, the same sentence repeated in disbelief: "This can't be real." The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, launched a formal investigation. Over months, investigators reviewed weather conditions, radar data, pilot communications, and flight path reconstruction. In 2021, the NTSB concluded the probable cause was pilot spatial disorientation in poor visibility, leading to loss of control. There was no finding of mechanical failure. The language of aviation was clinical: fog, disorientation, descent, impact. But grief isn't clinical, it is personal. By nightfall, NBA arenas across the country dimmed. Teams placed the ball at midcourt and let the 24-second shot clock expire in silence. In Los Angeles, fans stood outside Staples Center holding jerseys, candles, and handwritten messages. And among all the tributes, one detail remained like a sharp edge. Kobe wasn't flying to celebrate fame. He was flying to support his daughter. The last chapter of his story began not in a stadium, but on the way to a youth game. In the days following the crash, murals began appearing across Los Angeles. Downtown walls, school gyms, alleyways transformed into canvases. 2 numbers repeated everywhere: 8 and 24. They were more than jerseys worn by Kobe Bryant. They became symbols of phases: youth and maturity, ascension and mastery. Inside Staples Center, both numbers already hung from the rafters, permanently retired. After January 26th, they felt untouchable. Legacy in sports is often measured in trophies. Kobe had 5 NBA championships, 2 Finals MVP awards, 18 All-Star selections, and 81 points in a single game. But statistics fade into archives. What endured more powerfully was language: Mamba Mentality. It entered locker rooms, classrooms, boardrooms. Athletes from different sports cited it. Entrepreneurs adopted it. Students printed it on notebooks. It described a refusal to settle for comfort, an insistence on preparation, a discipline that did not depend on applause. At the public memorial held at Staples Center on February 24, 2020, a date chosen to reflect both jersey numbers, thousands gathered inside, millions watched worldwide. Teammates spoke. Friends remembered private moments. His wife, Vanessa Bryant, addressed the crowd with composure that silenced the arena. The ceremony was not only about achievements, it was about character. The competitor, yes, but also the mentor, the storyteller, the father who coached youth games with the same intensity he once brought to NBA Finals. In the years since, younger players reference him not as distant legend but as blueprint. Footwork drills echo his habits. Late-night training sessions mirror his stories. Even those who never met him feel guided by a standard he set. Legends in sports often retire quietly into statistics. Kobe's impact refused that fate. It moved beyond hardwood floors into mindset. His career ended in 2016. His influence did not. Numbers can hang from rafters, but mentality, that keeps playing.